welcome to the eCom Ops podcast. My name is Norbert, and today I'm talking to Meaghan and AJ. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
Very excited.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you here. A lot of valuable input for today is planned, I think. So,
We'll do our
not
best.
e-commerce store founders. So no stories about I create another Shopify store and I put in this and that products. No, today we're talking about data, a lot of data. So tell me a bit about yourself. What are you doing?
Ladies first.
Yeah, so AJ and I are co-founders of Praxis Metrics. And basically, we started from the agency background. So we used to work with a lot of e-commerce brands as well as information product marketers. And what we found was in our marketing efforts, you could guess all day long about what works, what doesn't work. You can try a million different things. But if you don't have the data that shows you where you've been, what's working, what's not working, then really you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's very uneducated and really not a scientific method to the madness. And so what we found as an agency is that we really needed to have data given to us in more real time, like not waiting on people to go and log into 12 different systems and extract it into an Excel spreadsheet and then, do this manual reporting every couple of days. It was just too time consuming and we wasted a lot of money on humans doing data work that was really something that could be automated. So we ended up looking to data to solve our own internal needs because we couldn't scale without understanding this, the data in all of our efforts. And so we ended up implementing our own data solutions just to have automaticity and to really be able to answer the important questions. And once we had that internally, all of our clients said, wow, geez, like I've never seen my marketing data this organized and in real time. And now it's super clear what I need to go and do. And the next logical question is, can I also get this for my operations, my inventory, my finance, my COGS, everything, every other aspect of business, not just the marketing. And so AJ, who's a serial entrepreneur, he's had an e-commerce business before and several other businesses. He was like, of course, yes, we can do that. And so then we created this data agency where we're basically an outsourced data team helping small to mid-sized companies that want to scale, but they understand that they need to understand their data in order to know what levers to pull and what's working and what's not working. So 5 years ago, we started our data agency and we've been doing it ever since. And now we've worked with over 150 different brands. So now we're able to help even smaller companies that might not know what questions to ask or what might not know what's possible with data. And they can learn from the mistakes and experiences of our other clients, and we can help them along that journey to scaling.
That's interesting. And what is even interesting is you come from the agency part. So you had an online marketing agency. Why did you leave that area?
That was because we saw the need. There was a pain that our clients had and that we had around data. So we had one of our smartest team members who was just doing manual reports in spreadsheets for 20 some clients on a weekly basis. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of wasted time where he needed to be spending time doing other things that were way more valuable to the company. So, but then we also saw the need that, look, there was a lot of enterprise solutions out there. Bigger companies had it for data, but not the smaller shops. So we said, well, how can we take what we've learned in our marketing being data driven, and how can we take that to the small and medium-sized businesses? So we saw the opportunity, we saw that there was a pain in the market, and we acted on it pretty quickly.
And really, there's a lot of great marketers out there. And so we were great at what we did, but what we found was there weren't a lot of great data people available to the small to mid-sized businesses.
And if they were available, they were very expensive, and people didn't know even how to hire them or where to get them started.
Yeah, minimum of $100,000 contracts, upwards of $1 million, and really our passion and where we really enjoy working is with founders and CEOs and CMOs that are looking to scale, but don't really know what they don't know. And so we just found that we could be world-class data agency, and anybody else could do the marketing. But really, especially in the last 5 years, there's been too many tools that are released on the market for, data and dashboards, but then nobody knows how to use them in that SMB space. Yeah. So we really just wanted to help our fellow entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Give me some examples. What can data tell me as an e-commerce store owner? Which
Ooh.
data is interesting for me as an owner?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, with most of our clients, what happens is they have an overarching goal, right? Maybe they want to scale the company to from 5 million to 50 million. Maybe they want to, run an organization that is world class or has great branding. And normally they've got that goal, and then they have specific questions that they're trying to answer. One of the big questions that we solve that's very relevant today is, how is COVID impacting my business? Where should I specifically spend more money and cut areas of spend to really optimize my store for the current environment? And so one thing that we do is we take all of the companies like transaction level data, who bought, how much did they buy, where did they buy from, and we look at that from an aggregate view, and we layer in not just internal client data, but also external data, things like COVID numbers, right? Which counties have stay-at-home orders versus which ones are completely open to the public, which countries. And then looking at that in comparison to your return on ad spend. Because if there are certain areas of the world or the country that are doing better and they're returning to normal life, and you have an increased return on ad spend of 10x in certain areas, and then the others that are locked down, it's only 2x, it makes more sense, and you can scale much faster by investing the same amount of dollars in these specific areas and hyper target those areas, right? So that's one example. Another example is, nowadays everybody's trying to compete with Amazon. And so they might have a Shopify store or WooCommerce or Magento store, and they're thinking, well, duh, we have to offer free shipping coupon codes, right? In order to compete, we have to do that. And so one thing that we'll do is we'll take those cohorts of clients and we'll just say, okay, so out of all of the clients that use that coupon code, did they end up coming back? Or did you end up investing this free shipping into a client that never returned, and then you're losing on the front end, expecting those people to become raving fans and come back later on and return that customer acquisition cost, and then that doesn't happen. So we've had, tons of clients go through, kind of the data on the coupon codes, and we've realized that a lot of them actually were creating net negative results rather than offering something like, hey, family and friends discount for 15%, or right. And those become, raving fans, those customers that are like, oh, I'm part of the friends and family group. Yep. Right. So data can be used in all aspects of business. Well, what other examples?
A part of that, like just going on that same journey, it's also understanding your cost of goods sold or cost of delivery, right? What does it actually take us to get that product out the door? So if you're losing money on just the upfront part, are you also pricing everything so that you can actually make money at the end? And I think a lot of people focus on the needle moving acquisition and marketing, the sexy stuff, but they don't really understand the financial numbers. And that's another thing that we can help with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to say this, especially the discussion about the shipping costs and newsletter signups for coupons and all this kind of stuff. I had this, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago in another interview, and it was the same way that we've talked. So it turns out that it does not really work well. You don't buy the right customer with that mechanism. You just want to you get someone that opts in one time and is never seen again. So this is really an interesting scenario, because I know it from the agency world as well, that a lot of agencies, even my team in the online marketing agency, is recommending to offer free shipping or shipping coupons or newsletter sign-up bonuses. And it changes my thinking about that. Because now with numbers that it might not be the best idea for that specific store. It's not a general rule for everyone. It might be a rule for specific store owners, but not for everyone. So it's very interesting to see that, and outside, you should look at those numbers if the customers are returning or not, if you offer that, if you're a store owner.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean Right. It doesn't mean it may not work for some people, but it's worth testing. But know your numbers if you're going to test it, and then cut that immediately if the numbers don't make sense.
And I think it's a really good point to make, is that something that works for one company does not work for all. Yeah. And so one thing that we've seen is you could have the exact same technology stack, meaning, you're using Shopify or Klaviyo or whatever technologies you're using, but every company that we work with suffers from terminal uniqueness, right? The way that you have your offers, the way that you are branded, the target demographic that your avatar is, like, every single company is not the same. Yep. And so for people to go and read these blogs or listen to podcasts and say, oh, that worked for them, it's definitely going to work for me, it's not always the case. You need to, going back to AJ's point, you have to test things, but then you also have to look at the data, and it's like a science experiment, right? You can have a hypothesis, you can go and test it, and if it's not true for your company, that's totally fine, because you eliminated that option and you're getting closer and closer to the things that will have a huge positive impact and will work for you in attracting your target avatar. So it's really important to collect data on all of these, kind of split tests or these new different methods, and then reverse engineer it and say, okay, so what aspects worked, what didn't work, and then you're continually optimizing to find out what's your special sauce. But you do that by looking at your numbers. And most founders that we talk to and most CMOs, like, they didn't get in this business to be in numbers. Like most of them are more creatives, and they're more passionate, and they're more driven around like purpose and intention and really that creative side. And so when we talk about numbers, they just glaze over. And they're like, no, thank you. But that's why it's so important to just outsource that or hire somebody that loves the numbers, because really every effort that you put into place, if it's not measured for success, then you're really just wasting a lot of time and money, trying things out and not knowing what's working.
Yeah. And very interesting question now. Based on your experience, because 150 brands increasing and before digital marketing agency and all this kind of stuff, what separates the winners apart from the rest?
I have an answer. I'll dive in while you think of it.
Go ahead.
I honestly, I think that it's humbleness of the executive team, of the C-suite team, to understand that you don't, as you're growing and scaling, you're asking certain questions, and the questions that you ask today are not going to be the same questions that you should be asking in 6 months. As your business grows and develops and evolves, so will the depth of the questions that you should be asking, right? Once you know an answer to something, there should be a follow-up question, right? Once you know what happened, like how many sales did we have over, Black Friday or Cyber Monday? Then the next question you should be asking is, why did this happen? And having humbleness in understanding that the business is outside of you, and that there are factors that impact the business outside of your decisions, right? There's external factors. And so understanding that you start by asking what happened, then why it happened, then how can we make this happen so that you can have like predictable results. And I think that, all of the founders or the C-suite that really go at their business and with curiosity, those are the ones that always end up winning. The ones that say, I'm not going to rely on the knowledge or the information that I currently have. Like, it's constantly evolving and changing. Our world is evolving rapidly, and you can't rely on old beliefs, old logic, and old nuances that you hold true. You have to be constantly learning and evolving. And I think that's the difference. Is there's some companies that say, oh, I've done this before, I've got nothing new to learn. But you always should be curious with your business and asking what's happening, why it's happening, and how can we make it happen.
Yep, I think that's right. And there's a lot of external factors right now.
Oh,
politics,
yeah.
the world, the status, COVID, all that to also take into the equation. I just wanted to add to that. It's really about taking action from data is the new competitive advantage. That's what we tell all of our clients, that if you aren't investing in and getting data involved in your business, then you're going to get blown out of the water by those who are, unfortunately. And more people are coming into online business and e-commerce, which is wonderful for the whole industry, but it's going to be convoluted. And those who adopt these principles and start investing in data, just like the day they invest in a marketing budget, is going to be the huge difference.
Mm-hmm. And I think I just wanted to ask, what should the biggest focus for an e-commerce business leader be? And I think you answered that question with the answer before.
Good.
Yeah, well, and I think that also it's, understanding what are the key movers in your business? What's the most important things that will have the most impact in your business? And we call those kind of like they're not vanity metrics, they're like the North Star metrics, the things that will really move the needle, that are really valuable to your organization, and understanding what those are. When it comes to e-commerce, there's a couple core ones, right? Obviously, like revenue. Obviously, it makes sense. Like it's a driving factor. Profitability, right? You have to understand your profitability. You have
And
to
that's
understand
true profit all the way through, right?
Yep.
Not just the upfront ROAS or the upfront front of funnel, top of funnel, but all of it, all the way back to even calculating people who are doing the marketing work, right? Their salaries, their costs, all of it for profit.
Yep. And then looking at your COGS, AJ touched on that earlier, like the costs around not only the product, but, delivering that product, shipping costs, tariffs. A lot of companies nowadays are international, and they have, this omnipresence across multiple platforms. And each of those comes with different levels of fees. And we've had a lot of clients really optimize their profitability by focusing on where those costs are and how they're stacking. And then I'd say one of the last ones that is a huge one is the ratio between lifetime value of your customers and the customer acquisition cost. It's imperative that you understand what your clients pay you at what intervals and how long it takes you to recoup your customer acquisition costs and how much you really have as an allowable cost per acquisition. Yeah. That's, I'd say, some of the biggest key principles that people should be focusing on.
Those are, and what I want to do is back up a few steps too, because those are awesome, but then none of that really matters if the tracking is off. So we have to make sure that, not only your store, sorry, this fly is bothering me. Not only the store is tracking the right data, but is Google Analytics set up? Are people using UTMs? Are the affiliate tracking set up? Like going in and doing an audit before, saying, oh, you need to go measure these metrics. Like, are you tracking the right data? Do you actually have the data so that we can, someone on your team or a company like ours can transform that into actionable insights? So tracking and then those metrics, I think that's kind of the horse before the cart.
Yeah. If I am a store owner, how can I 10x my growth?
Well, kind of what we've been talking about is first, there's this evolution we call the data maturity spectrum, and everybody's at different places, so it starts with tracking. It's making sure that all your different technology systems are collecting that data first. This is what we call data collection, is that kind of first step. And then we need to look at, most people after that get into spreadsheet hell, right? Their spreadsheet hell is not a bad thing. It's just, at least they have the data somewhere, but it's automating that information.
Well, so going back, so phase one, like if you're a startup, if you don't know anything about data, the number one thing, like AJ said, is tracking. And that will help you 10x your business, because when you're tracking things properly within individual systems, normally there's some sort of reporting tool within each platform. Like Google Analytics has reports, Facebook Ads has reports, Shopify has reports, and you can rely on those until a certain point. And if you focus on understanding what those dashboards are telling you, then you can 10x your business from 100,000 to 1 million. Then once you get to the point where you've got all of these independent systems tracking, that's great, but now they're all siloed. Now they don't tell a full cohesive story of your customer's journey, because you've got shipping data totally separate from inventory data, from et cetera. And then you get into, manual aggregation, where if you need more insights into your data and you don't want to invest in a big platform to do that, you can just have somebody on your team, like we did with the marketing agency, log into each of these systems, extract the important pieces, and then put it together in an Excel spreadsheet that tells a story. So the next layer is telling a story with your data and doing it manually, because going through that process will allow you to understand what are the important levers, what are the important key performance indicators that you should be tracking. And that in and of itself, there's a saying by Dan Riley, right, that says, you can't measure what is it?
No, you can't manage what you don't measure.
You can't manage what you don't measure.
Peter Drucker.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're not looking at these things, obviously you can't improve them, right? And so you need to start with this manual tracking, and that we see clients go from 1 million to 10 million just with manual spreadsheets and looking at these specific levels or levers. Then let's say you're at 10 million and you want to 10x your business. The next thing is automation, because automation is to your time what compound interest is to your money, meaning it's exponentially valuable and it can save you a ton. And like, you know, when you start growing, people are your most expensive resource. And so if you can minimize human effort, human error, and automate things, you can grow exponentially, and you can even layer in things like machine learning and AI. So there's, you know, kind of 4 separate levels of, you know, this maturity spectrum. And at each stage, there's specific actions you can take in order to 10x your business.
Awesome. So for the last step, you need SyncSpider. No.
Yeah.
The top 5 of the metrics data, so the desert island, desired island, what should I track the top 5?
Yep. So we mentioned a few of them, but it's going to be revenue, lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, COGS, and then
profitability.
Those are the 5 out of all the customers we worked with. These are the basics, and they may seem easy, they may seem simple, but this is it. This is like bare bones. You got to have these.
Well, and I think the big differentiation here is a lot of people, like, let's use lifetime value, for example. A lot of people can log into Shopify and it says lifetime value of $87. Like, okay, well, what that's doing is it's creating an average. And averages are inherently evil because they're taking your awesome best customers, your raving fans that might be worth $300, and it's mashing them up with the people who just got a trial sample for $1. Right?
Yeah.
And so this average is definitely not the number that you should be using to guide business decisions, because it's not detailed enough. And so when we talk about any of these metrics, it's not just, hey, I know this $87 average lifetime value. It's, okay, what is the value of the customers that come back and purchase from you more than 4 times? What about the ones who came from specific coupon codes like we talked about earlier, right? So a cohort is basically a customer segment. It's a group of people. And if you can track LTV by different cohorts, source, where they came from, product, what product they purchased first, because let's say that you've got like a $300 product and a $5 product. You think that the lifetime value of a customer who comes in and spends $300 on day one is going to be different than those who come and buy $5 on their first order? Of course. And you should be tracking those separately, because they're different groups with different, timelines to repurchase, different, really an evolution of this customer journey. It's totally different. So you need to not only know these 5 desert island metrics, you also need to know them in depth, intimately. You need to know all of the levers that impact it, because that's where you can really make a big difference, is if you start treating these customer segments separately and understanding the value of each of them, because then you can tailor your marketing efforts, your retargeting efforts, all of your copy to really their specific journey and optimizing their path.
Wow. It really, I think this is really good value for our audience here. And it shows different approaches. So I was the guy who thought the average is the average. So you have customers that purchase for $300, $400, $500, and you have smaller ones, and the average lifetime value is just a simple calculation, but it is not. So it's really interesting to hear that. And what do you think does automation? Is it important? Is it not important for those data things? So you covered that a bit earlier. What role does it play in e-commerce?
It's the key to scaling. It really is, because at a certain point in the business, it's changing so rapidly and there's so many different inputs that it becomes very inefficient to do these things manually, to do these calculations manually. In fact, we had a client that they're already doing about 70 million and they're looking for investors, right? And they want to take this to the next level. And they've been relying on manual reports this entire time. So every time an executive or a leader had a question, they would have to go send some EA or executive assistant down into the depths of the data and go figure it out, wait a week and a half, get that data back. By then it's outdated, right? And then next time they have that question again, they have to go do it again. And we've had clients that they literally wanted to get invested in, and because they weren't able to give these numbers in real time and show, well, how has this changed over time? You know, what actions have you taken understanding these things? It's really cost them investment, right?
Yep.
And so automation is so important, because especially nowadays, if you're not automating your systems and you're making delayed decisions, let's say it's just by 2 weeks. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes it's every quarter you're doing reports, right? And if you're making delayed decisions, those 3 months, those 2 weeks could make it or break it in terms of capturing new audiences, capturing new clients. I mean, today's customers have a very short attention span, right? And you have to capture it. You have to be the ones at the front of their mind in order to capture their dollars. And frankly, if you're waiting on reports and you're making decisions 2 weeks late, it's going to cost you. It's going to be the difference between being first place and last place, because everybody else is doing this.
Yeah.
Everybody else has automation. Why not you?
And part of the automation is also notification. So as a business owner, you might be stressed. You might not have time to always watch the report, but you can at least set up some kind of alerts at specific kind of action points you need to take. So especially when you run marketing campaigns or what else, and something goes in the wrong direction, you need to put your eyes on that and get an alert. And this is also something that you can automate.
Yeah, managing by exception. We also had a client once who they had all of these distribution centers, and every person that worked in these distribution centers had this checklist that they had to walk through every single day. And this checklist had to be gone, like they'd fill it out and then they put it on their supervisor's desk every day. And then at the end of the day, the supervisor had to go through 150 different forms just to see if everything was working, just to see if there was any red flags. Then he'd go through all 150 of these, and then he'd find maybe 5 that had issues, and then he'd go and tackle that. So the benefit of automation is screw those 145 things that you don't have to monitor. If it's going well, then you shouldn't have to go in and create more work for yourself. You should only be focused on those 5 things that create action or that need to be addressed. And that's what automation does as well, is it filters through and it eliminates a lot of noise so that you can focus on the things that you need to focus on, rather than just having to go through everything and figure out if it's good or bad, you know? So alerts and that proactivity that allows you to manage by exception is key.
Yeah, totally agree. So a lot of time for that interview. It was so interesting. Last question for the day, and I love this question. Who has taught you the most in e-commerce in your career?
Who has taught me? Well, I'll go first. I would say my old business partner and friend, Josh Bozzoni. When I was in CPG and we had our own product, our own supplement product, this was early on where I had only sold services or been in digital products. The first time being in supplements and in the physical product game, I learned a ton. And I was decently data driven at that time. But then when I looked at tracking subject lines, revenue per email, and all the different variations in just a simple spreadsheet, and being able to repeat and see which things could be moved around and tried to get the most out of our list, that was like light bulb, like, all right, there's definitely something to do this, and I'm going to dig in even more. So I'd say my buddy Josh Bozzoni.
Yep. And I'd say for me, it really comes from our clients. I'd say there's 2 clients that really stick out where their adoption of the data was really great. Number one is our friend Jeremy Reeves. He worked for a company called Danette May, and now he's started Peak Biome, another e-commerce brand. But what was great about him is he understood the questions that he needed to ask. And anytime he'd have a question, he'd say, all right, let's figure this out. Instead of just, oh, I wonder about this, and then moving on, it would be, let's dig into this. Let's figure this out. And so we would go, he'd ask a question, we'd create the dashboard or the reports, and then he'd say, oh, now I have this new question, and it would continue to build in terms of intensity and in terms of value as well. And so that was awesome to just see the evolution of the questions that he would ask. And then another great company that we worked with was Black Rifle Coffee Company. And the reason I learned from them is because, you know, a lot, like AJ alluded to this earlier, he said most e-commerce companies, when they think about, you know, the levers that they can pull and the value of data, they think about it from a sales and marketing perspective, because those are the sexy things, right? With Black Rifle, they really, really, really value data in every aspect of the company. And so it wasn't, they valued it so much that we ran all of our efforts in parallel, because they were like, every minute that we don't have this valuable insights, it's costing us millions of dollars because we're not learning. And so we were able to integrate data practices into every single department within their company. And they were using this on a daily basis for all of their daily stand-ups. And it was truly integrated into the foundation of the business. Because, and AJ says this a lot, is every business is a data business. You just don't know it yet. And so it's been really cool to see our own clients really adopt that, and then the value that they get out of it and their ability to scale.
Yeah, I need to agree. So even for us at ThinkSpider, it's a SaaS application, and especially for SaaS applications, data is very, very important. So the trial to conversion rate, and how many visitors you need to get X trials, and from the trials, how many do you convert into paying customers, and so on. And yeah, a lot of data coming in, and thank you so much. I really, I learned a lot today. So I love your 5 points to track. The thing with the coupon codes is really, again, very, very interesting. And tracking data. So if a store owner is out there not yet tracking data and not yet tracking the right data, start doing it.
Right.
Start
Yes.
tracking. It's so important. Yeah, check
Yeah, even if
out.
you can't do anything with the data right now, if it's tracking, later on you can hire an analyst to go through it. But if you don't have the data, they can't analyze anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
tracking is
exactly.
so important.
Gather
So
it now.
check out praxismetrics.com, right?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Meaghan, AJ, thank you so much for your time. Stay safe and great luck with your company.
Thank you very much,
you.
Norbert.
Thanks for
You
having
too.
us.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.